This is a presentation on the use of machine learning and artificial intelligence to detect breast cancer. These are the contents and the order which we'll be following throughout this presentation. So we start with the definition and the development of breast cancer or cancer in general, which comes from cancerous cells or tumors, and tumors come from the abnormal development of body cells. So the early detection of a cancerous cell or a tumor factors in greatly on the detection and ability for the physicians to cure this cancer that slowly develops. So if it can be detected in its early stages, then people can be saved because cancer is a terminal illness, and being able to detect and cure it early on is beneficial, and it can be done efficiently and effectively with machine learning and AI, as we shall see. The data we're going to use in this project is numeric, and it's obtained from various images obtained from a repository known as Cargo. The images are taken using medical radiography imaging and various dimensions and attributes of the images. The images are cells, body cells, some of which are cancerous, others are non-cancerous. So we'll be using that data to train, analyze, and effectively build an algorithm that can detect cancer or otherwise in other body cells. The factors I considered while selecting this data: the sample size is large. In machine learning, there's a problem known as variance, whereby an algorithm might be overtrained on a small set of data, and it can be 100% accurate on that portion of data, but then it cannot accurately predict another set of data. So this sample size that I'm going to use is very large, very diverse. It's accurate, and it was collected by a trusted set of individuals. And the website Cargo itself, it has a good reputation regarding such instances of providing accurate data sets. It's relevant. The algorithm uses numeric data, and this data is numeric. It's free. It's free, so the cost is not there at all. And then the data has labels. So in machine learning, whether a data set is labeled or not plays a big role, a big factor in how easy it is to use and how efficient, how effective the procedure is. Some of the critical features of the data are the categories. It's well grouped in well in in good categories. Some of the cells are taken from men, some are taken from women. Breast cancer is prevalent in both genders, so it's important for us to know where these cells are taken from. Some of the cells are benign, some are malignant, some are, that is to say, some are cancerous, some are non-cancerous, the healthy and sick cells. So knowing beforehand which cells we're working on or with at a particular time is important to training the machine to learn properly that these are the qualities of a healthy cell, and these are the qualities of a cancerous cell. The data is well formatted and consistent in that it has 4 significant figures with 2 decimal places on each, and that is the case with all the numerals or all the digits in the entire data set. It's diverse. I mentioned this earlier, that it's a large data set, and it has a lot, it really has the attributes or the qualities of a numerous number of, of cells. So the algorithm will be able to learn most, if not all, the qualities of cells that are possible. It has well labeled attributes, and some of the attributes kind of body cells we're going to be working with The attributes are considering attributes such as the radius, the smoothness, the texture, the concavity, and this data set has all these labels on the various cells and on the various columns. So it will be easy to work with in that. It has good labels. It has all the three forms of the data that we need. It has some data to train the algorithm, some data to test the algorithm, and unlabeled data in cases where we might need to do some unsupervised learning to just let the algorithm figure out some patterns in the data itself. Yeah. Up next, we talk about Bayesian theorem, which is it's a theorem that describes the probability of an event based on conditions that might be related to that event. So Bayesian theorem is used in cases whereby we need to know how likely something is to happen, but we are finding this probability basing on other events related to it. So, for example, a good example they use is whether the grass is wet and if it rained or not. So if we find the grass wet, there's a high chance that it rained, or maybe a sprinkler system was turned off. So what are the chances that it rained versus the chances that it's just a sprinkler system? Yeah, that's Bayesian theorem. We use it in such cases whereby it might be hard to know the exact probability of something, but basing on other related factors to that something, we can get to know how likely something is to happen. This is the formula for Bayesian theorem. And yeah, I given E, this E stroke is E given E. It's the conditional probability we are looking for. It's given by the intersection of the two events over the probability of E. Then we talk about naive Bayes. Naive Bayes classifiers is a collection of classifiers based on the Bayes theorem. It's not a single one, but a collection based on the same principle. So in naive Bayes classifiers, we assume that the features we're considering are completely independent of the rest. So that so the main assumption here, the key element here is that assumption that everything we're working with is independent of each other, and yeah, that's how we work with it. The data sets used in naive Bayes consist of these two parts, the feature matrix and the vector, and the response vector, sorry. The feature matrix consists the rows of the data set in which each row consists of the value of dependent features, and then a response vector contains a value of class variable or the output for each row of the feature matrix. Yep. And we've talked about the fundamental assumption is that each feature is independent and makes an independent contribution to the outcome. This is the formula we use for Bayes' theorem for naive Bayes classifiers, and it's derived from the Bayes theorem. As you can see, the similarity. It's just that instead of using the normal intersection, we multiply because, again, the features are independent and they contribute independently to the outcome. Next, we talk about Bayesian networks. And a Bayesian network is a probabilistic graphical model that represents a set of variables and their conditional dependencies. We use Bayesian networks in situations whereby we're trying to predict the likelihood of something, yeah, while knowing the causes, while knowing the contributing factors. We have an example here of various symptoms and a disease, whereby if you know the symptoms of something, of a particular disease, you can effectively calculate the probability that someone is suffering from this disease given the fact that they have these symptoms, such and such. We compare Bayes' theorem and naive Bayes, and the major difference here is the independence. In naive Bayes, the major assumption being that all the features you're considering are independent from one another and they contribute equally to the outcome. That's not the case in Bayes' theorem, and in Bayes' theorem remember we said in Bayes' theorem we find the probability of something happening, the likelihood of something happening based on other dependent factors. So that's the difference, that in Bayes' theorem, the factors you consider, the item or the instance whose probability you're trying to find is completely dependent on the factors you're considering, while in naive Bayes, all the features, all the factors are independent of each other. This is a comparison between naive Bayes and Bayesian networks, and it's basically the same thing. Naive Bayes, we assume all the input features are independent. And then in Bayesian networks is a situation whereby we know which factors depend on each other. Remember, we said the diseases and the symptoms. So the fact that the disease is there, it's clear, it's evident that the symptoms had to appear, or the signs had to appear first. In that case, the disease, we can say that the disease depends on the signs and the symptoms, and it shouldn't be the case in naive Bayes, because in naive Bayes, all the input features are independent from one another. These are some of the references that I used to make this presentation. Thank you. See you next time.